Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Please take a seat, grab some mulled wine, and we'll get started. I'm really happy to welcome you all, the full house, to Kounnas' Fireside Chat, How You Want to Change the World. This is our third Kounnas Masterclass for 2016, and I am really happy to recognise many faces in the audience, so it's really nice to know that people are, some of you are coming back to our events. But for those of you who are new to Kounnas and MAP, you are very welcome. My name is Claire Harding. I am the Deputy Director of the Melbourne Accelerator Program, or MAP, which, as you may know, was last year ranked the 8th best such entrepreneurship program of its kind in the world, which was really exciting for us. At MAP, we care very much about big problems, and we care about bringing about positive change. So we founded Kounnas, which is MAP's impact entrepreneurship program, especially to inspire and connect both aspiring and established entrepreneurs who are driven by a mission to make the world a better place. And we're going to hear from 3 of them tonight. So I'm delighted to introduce them very briefly. Dave Lung is a friend of MAP, and the MAP team met Dave in Silicon Valley on our trade mission in 2015. He describes his company Limbr as the Uber for mental health. Limbr is a social enterprise on a mission to make mental health care more accessible and more acceptable, and using tech and startup principles for maximum impact. And I'm interested to learn how Dave's personal experience with workplace-induced stress inspired him to tackle how the mental health system works, or doesn't. Steve Kounnas is co-founder and COO of PHORIA', which is a MAP alumni company. Their primary service offering, Scanned, is transforming the way that property is bought and sold online through the use of interactive 3D tours. But outside of property, PHORIA' have a strong focus on social good projects. For example, they're working with the National Trust and with hospitals, where they're exploring how to use immersive media to help with patient recovery. And PHORIA' is an aspiring B Corp, and I hope we'll hear a bit more about that later too. And finally, Dr. Shelley Meagher is CEO of Do It on the Roof. Her company designs green roofs and the landscapes that surround them. Shelley has directed and coordinated award-winning green design and construction projects. And her experience is especially interesting to me because she brings a remarkably diverse skill set to her business. She's an international expert in romantic literature. She has been an ancient history tour guide in France. She's run other businesses, and a little bird has told me that she is even a table tennis champion. I don't know how useful those skills are. Anyway, welcome to all of you. Tonight's format is that each founder will do a 2-minute pitch giving you an overview of their business, and then Abina Ofori, the Kounnas program manager, will lead a fireside discussion to go with the mulled wine. So, over to you. So, Dave, I think you're kicking things off.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Chung. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Limbr, and our problem, and I mean that collectively, is the mental ill health crisis. I'm sure some of you are familiar with these stats, but they're what we're focusing our enterprise on. Nearly half of us will be affected by mental ill health in our lives. It currently represents 13% of the global disease burden. It's higher than cardiovascular disease and cancer. The World Health Organization projects that depression alone will be the #1 disease by 2030. The real crux of the problem, though, is the treatment gap. So 65% of those that suffer mental illness never access treatment. This is a paradox because 80% of those that actually undergo treatment, They see a reduction in symptoms and increased quality of life. But you can see that the majority of sufferers, they don't feel like the community is compassionate or understanding towards mental illness. So at Limbr, we work in technology, which may seem slightly ill-advised right now. We've diagnosed the problem at Limbr as treatment works, but people aren't accessing it due to stigma and accessibility. So we are, as you've heard, a mission-oriented startup. This is our core objective over everything else, making mental health care more acceptable and more accessible. This is how we do it. It's based on the emotional truth that we like to believe in, that the antidote to shame is hearing someone say, "Me too." So Limbr is an app that's accessible on web and mobile, and it has two key parts. The first part is our community, where we encourage you to be vulnerable and real. And we've designed it with social engineering and sociologists to try and create the right structures so that people spread empathy. So we are trying to empower users to feel less ashamed and less alone, and therefore ready to ask for help. And what do you know? Help is right there. So there's a portal that connects every service provider in the world on an app. And when you're experiencing empathy and feeling less alone, you're empowered to ask for help. And here is your access point. It's discreet, it's convenient, it's affordable. And we think by connecting people to help through an app and snowballing that social proof back into the community, we're showing people not only is it okay to be vulnerable, not only is it okay to ask for help, treatment works and people are getting better. So this is a for-profit enterprise, and this whole talk will be about how we're using business to make an impact. So if we look at this in market terms, you have a huge market where in the US alone, $200 billion a year is spent on mental health, $8 billion in Australia. The global cost is in the trillions of mental illness. But we also know that only 1/3 of people with mental illness actually access treatment. So 2/3 of the market is locked up. So how are we applying what we know, building digital startups, to make an impact to this cause? Well, we're doing what other very well-known companies have done. Uber, Tinder, Airbnb, they created behaviors that in the past weren't really socially acceptable. But by aggregating all of this behavior into one platform with a really great user experience, with really great user benefits, what they did is snowball social proof and validate to everyone, hey, this service is here, it works, why not access it? That's what Limbr is doing. We can use that to create a huge amount of value monetarily, but we can attach that to meaning by structuring our organization as a social enterprise. Yeah, that's my 2 minutes with lots of technical difficulties. Thanks.
Hi everyone, Shelley Meagher from Do It on the Roof. So Abena asked us to send her 2 to 3 slides, and with the optimism and disregard for received wisdom of a typical entrepreneur, I sent her 23 slides, thinking that maybe I could get through them all. But then I remembered a precept of my mother's, which is also a principle of the business, which is that honesty is the best policy. So I was unable to lie to Abena about it and just said I would make a selection of my slides, which I will now attempt to do. We do gardens on roofs and walls. And here are some. That's a house in the Blue Mountains, built in the 1980s, early 1980s. You can see the garden growing in its atrium and on the roof. This is in Ferntree Gully, a garden on a roof. And this is a house in Kew in Melbourne. Why we do it is that we want to bring nature back into our cities and turn our grey rooftops from grey and grey balconies to green and increase the natural capital of our cities. Why people buy what we do, so we do green walls as well as green roofs. The primary reason why people buy what we do is because it's beautiful, and so we're in the very fortunate position of selling something that's at that level quite easy to sell. It's easy to open doors and have conversations about green roofs. That's a green roof in Paris on the Hermes building. And so you can see there how green roofs can be used to align with brand. There's many reasons why you might buy into green roofs, so I've just selected a couple. Green roofs enhance the performance of PVs, photovoltaic cells, for solar energy by lowering the ambient air temperature around them. Once they get above 28 degrees, they decline in the efficiency of their performance. A conventional rooftop will reach 50 to 70 degrees in the warmer months of the year. If you've got a green roof, due to the transpiration of the plants and the evaporation from the soil or substrate, you'll be keeping it down to about 30 degrees for most days of the year, except about 10. This is an interesting reason why people get into them in Australia. There's generally no financial return on investment for managing water better on sites, and by that I mean managing the quality of your water and managing the volume of water that leaves your site. Nonetheless, it's a topic that I find in many of the major sales meetings we have lights up the eyes of the people we talk to. We do design, we do construction, and we do maintenance. And our particular areas of focus are the management of green roofs. So we do maintenance, and that's a bit of a gap area when it comes to green roofs. But the elephant in the room that's not even spoken about is how maintenance gets managed. And in particular there, we're interested in how that happens in commercial environments and in multi-residential properties where you've got a facility manager who would manage whatever maintenance happens on a building, but they're used to dealing largely with assets that don't change. Green roofs and green walls change all the time because they're full of living organisms. So they're a different sort of asset for that industry to deal with. If you want to know more about that, we've got a special offer for you on our book on managing green roofs. And so two other areas of focus for us are to create green roofs. Broadly speaking, you need to bring together horticulturalists and engineers together with green roof technology. What we add to that is ecologists, and what that enables us to do is design green roofs that will be great green roofs for the long term. So this is our head ecologist, Trevor Edwards, and we're focusing on increasing the gene pool of plants used on green roofs, as well as increasing the diversity of plant species. Australia has 23 to 24,000 species of flora, native flora. Only 2,000 have horticultural lines. And unless you have a horticultural line, you aren't available in nurseries for use. So we're very interested to increase the amount of our native flora that's used. And the final area of focus for us that's really important to us is that green roofs are gardens, green walls are gardens, and you can't have a garden without a gardener. Sounds obvious, but often the market is saying to us, or often related industries will say to us, how can we reduce the maintenance? We're saying, no, the gardener is the key part of all the value you're going to receive. And if you want to realise the potential of your asset, the gardener is the key person to do that. Your garden does need to understand green roofs. And so to enhance people's understanding of green roofs, we do a lot of community engagement work. That comes from our background as a campaign when we were promoting what green roofs are. One of the surprising things we've learnt since becoming a business is that our community, our capacity to engage the community is of value to property developers. Thanks a lot.
Well, I tried really hard to stick to the 2 minutes, so I'm really sorry if this is really quick. So my name's Stephen, and I'm one of the co-founders of Scanned. We established Scanned about 18 months ago now to create 3D tours for the property industry here in Australia. Over the past 18 months, we've grown a lot and expanded into a number of different industries, providing a whole suite of products and services. As such, we're currently going through a bit of a rebrand, going from Scanned, who we used to be, to PHORIA. So the basis behind PHORIA is that there's 4 key pillars. The first being Scanned. It's still very much the backbone of our company. It provides us with our revenue stream that allows us to experience these other projects that I'll explain in a second. When we first started Scanned, we teamed up with realestate.com and Domain to provide 3D tours at the forefront of their listing pages. This got us a lot of attention with real estate agents around Australia. From there, we grew a national network of 3D tour providers that now service over 70 clients nationwide. Outside of the commercial aspects of Scanned, we partnered up with the National Trust here in Victoria to help preserve a lot of our iconic heritage here in Australia. And it was our first social impact project that we undertook. It actually created some of our most favourite projects, so some of them being the Old Melbourne Jail just down the road, Polly Woodside, and the Shrine of Remembrance, just to name a few. So Captured is the second pillar, and that's a software platform that we've been developing for the past 12 months that's going to enable any freelancer, photographer, or a real estate agent to pick up a 3D scanner and provide the exact same service we do under Scanned. So Planned is our off-the-plan 3D tour experience for high-rise developments, and it allows anyone to experience these tours through web, mobile, virtual reality, and augmented reality as well. And the last one here is Dreamed. So Dreamed is where a lot of our social impact and social good kind of stems from. It's also where our team's creativity kind of flows through and allows us to experience and test new boundaries. So it's here under Dream where our conversation with the Royal Children's Hospital began, where we had the simplistic idea of providing virtual reality to the patients that are in hospital. What started as a very simple idea for entertainment quickly stemmed into three key areas, the first being education and learning. So just the other day, we captured our first surgical procedure in virtual reality, and this content's now going to be available for doctors and nurses around Australia to refine their own procedures. This content's also going to be used by patients and families to get an idea of what they're about to go through as well. The second part is research. So this is something that we're really passionate about PHORIA. So we're going to be teaming up with doctors and researchers to see how VR can assist in the rehabilitation process of these patients. And the last one is the reason why we went there to begin with, to be honest, entertainment. So distributing as many VR headsets as possible around Australia and providing engaging and informative content that allows these people to escape from where they are. And I think that's about 2 minutes. So yeah, that's PHORIA. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So sorry about the extreme technical difficulties today. Next Fireside Chat will make it a lot more smooth, and really excited to have you all here with us tonight. I want to start off by talking a little bit more about the social cause. All the causes that you guys advocate for are so broad. What was it that inspired you, and what are the motivations that keep you going since you first started?
Go for it, Dave.
So yeah, we have a fairly kind of light bulb moment that kind of led us to this, which is that we got into startups about 3 or 4 years ago. I had no idea what I wanted to do at that point. I'd quit my job as a lawyer and was just trying to figure stuff out. Found myself in the startup world, which excited me. Then found out that we had built something that people really liked. Then found out that someone wanted to give us like $2 million in investment. And we were building this thing and we had no idea what we were doing, but we were incredibly passionate about it. The mission at that company was to try and change the way we work inside large organizations. So we had this idea to make an app that would solve that problem. Yeah, it turns out other people believed in us, but then it got really, really hard. Essentially, we had to struggle with the everyday stresses of building up a company, along with, I guess, people that really liked our idea, trying to take it from us, essentially. So there were lawyers involved, and there were, threats made and things like that, and it was an extremely stressful experience. Life as well was still happening, so I had someone that I cared about deeply, dealing with some very serious mental health challenges. And the biggest challenge was getting them to understand that they weren't a burden, and then they shouldn't be ashamed. So we got to that point, it took a lot of work, and then when we actually tried to find someone to help this person, that experience was one of the worst consumer experiences I've really engaged in. And so while we were seeing this company we'd created kind of being taken from us, I was also experiencing this kind of personal battle. And yeah, and this kind of light bulb kind of just went off and just said, like, there's got to be a better way. Essentially what we were doing at our last company which was another marketplace app. So if you had too much work to do inside your company, you could post it onto this app and other people inside your company could help you out and they would apply. It was pretty simple. But applied to the mental health crisis, we saw a more difficult challenge, which was the stigma involved. So not only do you have to connect people that need care to those who can provide it, you need to overcome the social barriers for those people to say, hey, I need help. So when that moment occurred, it kind of, it fed us in this really nourishing way. And I think the reason why we actually managed to, in some satisfactory way, exit our last startup was because we were social entrepreneurs without realizing. No one had told us what social enterprises were. No one had told us what socially minded entrepreneurs were. We'd just been whisked into this crazy kind of Silicon Valley dream world. And the reason we really survived that challenge was because we wanted to stay true to our mission, and the people that wanted to make more money didn't really care about that. So the fact that we had this new thing that we could work on that was really socially minded meant that we needed to spend as much time as we could understanding that third sector of social enterprise and how it intersects with technology. Unfortunately, there's not a huge intersection with that third sector and startups, but we're starting to see it a lot more. And yeah, we're really excited to be a bit of a flag bearer, hopefully, for that movement. And yeah, that's what motivates us.
Wow. I grew up in Melbourne, in Beaumaris, which is on the bay to the south. It's a lovely area of sandstone cliffs and tea tree scrub, which when I was growing up was the native vegetation. And it's still a lovely area, but I then in my adult life, lived overseas for 10 years. And when I came back, a huge amount of the vegetation in Melbourne had disappeared. And that was something that made me very sad. Our city had sprawled, our buildings had got bigger, and we had a roofscape that was barren. And I had been living in the UK, where green roofs in the time I had been living there had become quite common. I would often change flights on my way back to Australia in Singapore, where there's just been an explosion of green roofs. So I'd been exposed to green roofs elsewhere. It just seemed to me obvious that we could do that, and we were missing out by not doing it. And having the natural world as part of my life at the same time as I do all the things I love doing in cities was something I wanted to go on having. And luckily it's something that lots and lots and lots of us want to have. So my team is made up of people who all, like me, want to get gardens happening on roofs and walls. They've all got their own personal story for why they care so much about that. What keeps us motivated in pursuing it is that, what I think keeps us motivated, they'd probably all say something different, but my guess as to why we're all really motivated is that we're taking practical action all the time towards doing something we really care about. And that's just a really exciting thing to do. I find that extremely exciting, and it's exciting to help other people be able to do that too. And in addition, because most people do care about having nature in their lives, but it's not widely spoken about, there's quite a few opportunities for us to speak about it. And each of the people in my team is highly articulate in different ways. And so in their work, they do a lot of practical work, but they also do a lot of communication about what they really care about. So I think it's important for their motivation and mine, because I get a stack of motivation from hearing them talk, is to not just have the chance to take practical action towards a vision you care about, but to get to speak about that vision and communicate it to other people and see that the people around you really care about it too.
Awesome. I completely agree with that last part that you're talking about there about team. So I'm fortunate enough to have a group of co-founders that are very like-minded. So when we first started this, we wanted to make a change, we wanted to make a difference. We never really got into it to make millions of dollars, which would be nice, but our main purpose was to make a difference. When we first started, we had no idea what that difference was going to be or how we'd do it. But as different opportunities sort of arose, we kind of jumped on it at any given chance. And when VR became a thing, and because we're playing with 3D tech, it seemed like the right fit for us to continue in that way. And it was actually this certain project that kind of got us into hospitals. We always thought it'd be a good idea, but never actually jumped at the opportunity. We're working on the TV show The Block, and we scanned all the apartments, and a couple of the contestants visited the hospital down at the Alfred, and they went to visit a girl, Becky, who was a very big fan of the show, and they invited her to come to the open inspection, but on the day, unfortunately, she became unwell and couldn't leave the hospital. And the contestants knew what we were doing, so they asked if we could take one of our virtual reality headsets to her, and we jumped at the opportunity to obviously help them out there. And it was a really nice experience for everyone that was involved. Later, we got an email from Becky's father, Paul, and it was one of the most amazing emails that, as a team, we've ever received. And it kind of just explained that his daughter was sad and happy for about 3 months, and then for the week after it, she couldn't get the smile off her face, just from a really simple action that we provided. This lovely girl, her vital signs even increased for the week after, and it was that moment that we kind of knew the opportunity was there, but actually decided to jump at it and do something and actually go out of the way. And it's those kind of reactions, and when we do have those experiences with other people, that kind of make us continue to keep doing what we're doing, to see how far we can push it and see how many lives we can actually touch and experience with change. Thank you.
Awesome answers, everyone. So that kind of brings us nicely to the title of our talk. So you want to change the world. It's a pretty cynical title for a talk. So I'd just like to ask each of you, what is the biggest misconception people have around the social issue that you champion, and what do you say in those frustrating moments to change minds? We'll start with you, Steve.
First? Yeah, I can't pass the buck this time. So working with tech and VR, so yeah, I guess one of the biggest misconceptions is that virtual reality, and especially what we're working with, is for gamers. And right now, sure, a lot of it is, but a really interesting study came out the other day showing that by the year 2020, $150 billion in revenue is going to be pushed into the VR industry, and only 3% of that's going to be for gamers. So there's a huge opportunity there for architects, tourism, and obviously medicine to kind of jump on this and see how it can make a difference. And when you can see the reaction and things like that, it's kind of making that change already. And even, I'm not sure if anyone's well-versed, but Oculus Rift, so one of the leading VR providers, they actually released an article yesterday or the day before speaking about how they're really pushing for non-for-profits, for schools, for children, for storytellers to kind of use this technology in other ways. So that's kind of where we'll be at.
Thanks. Yeah, so we started as a campaign 4 years ago, and the scene has really changed since then. When we started, the biggest misconception was that a green roof was a roof that was painted green. So obviously that was a little bit of a barrier to us. And around that time, there was a common perception that you couldn't put gardens on roofs, and if you did, you'd have a problem with leaks, and you might have a problem with fire. Grand Designs has really dealt with those misperceptions. I find now, I haven't been asked in years really about those, or only in the most random ways. So I wouldn't really say there are any common misperceptions now, but there are expectations about the way that our company is structured and the sort of relationships we'll have with other companies and how we'll do dealings. And I guess there's a number of ways in which you can be innovative. One is through technology, and certainly the technology we use is innovative, and our combination of ecology and horticulture with it is innovative. But you can also be innovative in the way you structure your business and how you set up your contractual relationships with other people. And I guess I'm trying to answer your question about what you asked something about what are the difficulties of, yeah. So The thing I find difficult in an unexciting way is that when you're innovating, the most common response you're going to receive is, no, you can't do that. And what I'm trying to say is these days that's not the response to the proposition of a green roof. But the way we go about doing it, very commonly people will say, no, you can't do that, or they might be angered by the way we do it. And so just persevering with what seems to you the best way of achieving your ends can be just hard work and take lots of energy. It's not impossible, but you've got to keep going at it all the time.
I guess our entire enterprise is based on a misconception, which is that people that suffer from mental illness, there's something wrong with them, that help isn't available, and that there's a social stigma to it, essentially. I mean, yeah, I could sit here all day and talk about the misconceptions of mental health, but I think what's far more positive is what we can realise is an essential truth amongst all of us, is that we all go through ups and downs, and that once we can overcome the stigma, we kind of view it as a tipping point problem where collectively there's this misconception that you can't tell your employer that you're having a really tough day today and you can't come in, and maybe it's an anxiety attack or maybe it's something else. So I think if we all collectively realise, and if there's this one platform, this community where everyone's seeing each other understand these misconceptions are completely false, then there's this kind of tipping point effect, which is a business principle as well. So that's what we're really trying to do, and I think if we can get to that point where we can actually smash the stigma and reveal it as a complete misconception, then we can actually move past that and move to kind of mental hygiene and mental wellness, which is a business strategy as well. So once someone who might be suffering from a diagnosable mental illness like depression is accessing care on Limbr, and they're being vulnerable, and there's this concept that you're strengthened by others' vulnerability, that if you hear someone up on stage really vulnerable, you see them as courageous. But if someone asks you to get up there, it's the scariest thing in the world to do. So once you see it and it starts to perpetuate, I think that's when we can reveal these misconceptions, and that's when we can move forward to mental hygiene, so that we will start to offer meditation and nutrition advice, and then you can move forward to that mental wellness, or self-actualization as it's sometimes called, or flow states, which is your real peak performance, and that's where we want to move Limbr to. So the first mission is hard enough, I think. We'll see how we go with that. But the misconceptions in mental illness is exactly what we're trying to debunk.
What do people say about you trying to solve it through an app?
So I think my favorite interactions is when someone instantly is really skeptical and they're like, whoa, I don't like this one bit. And I manage to just get them to understand what we're trying to do. I think, people have this view of technology as this artificial thing. It's essentially a tool that you could see it almost as part of humanity. That's how we've evolved, When we started cooking food, we got the energy we needed to create the neurons to actually invent language, and then that went on to the wheel and so on and so forth. Like, it's part of who we are, and at its simplest form, it's all made of atoms. We're all natural. So technology is not this artificial thing that we can't control, that we have to be afraid of or wary of. It's something that we just need to be mindful of and think about how we can employ it in the best way to solve these massive problems. So when I say to them, think about, I like to use the example of Tinder, because people instantly are like, what, Tinder? How is this in any way related? But there was a stigma, especially in Australia, I think, around online dating, where maybe 10, 15 years ago, you wouldn't say that you tried to meet someone online. But then this thing came along where everyone could see that everyone was doing it, and it was fun, and everyone was, marriages were coming out of it. It was new love, essentially, which has to be a positive thing. And that is our concept with mental illness, is once you can see everyone using this thing in a nice user experience and using startup principles, which is what has given birth to these huge enterprises that we all use every day today, then you can actually start to shift capital markets, we can shift technology, we can shift all these things that we think of as industry and separate to impact and social good or changing the world, and align them so that they work together.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. My next question is around teams, team building, maybe clients, first followers. Who is your favorite first follower and why? Shelley, I'm going to ask you first. Yeah.
I need to think. Oh, well, I guess my business partner. I said I was going to do it. He said he was coming in. He came up with the name Do It on the Roof when we were a campaign, and I started the campaign with someone else. She didn't want to become a business, and he did, and that's been a really awesome relationship. Of course, not without some tensions, but you know, learning to negotiate those together is a really rewarding thing to do as well. What was the second part of your question, Abina?
I was just trying to get around, you know, the misconception of the heropreneur, and that you came up with this idea by yourself because you saw this particular niche, and then you just sort of ran with it all on your own. So it's great to hear that, you know, you had someone with you backing you up, and, you know, your first follower, the first proof, social proof that this idea works because there are two minds behind it.
Yeah.
So follow something that kind of really helped us through that same story from before about Becky and her dad. So his name's Paul, and he's still actually working with us in a lot of the ideas that we're kind of working with in these hospitals. So he's from out in Bendigo, and unfortunately soon after he sent us that email, his daughter did pass away, and as kind of like as part of that, saw the need that kind of brought the happiness that he brought to his daughter. So he's getting behind what we're doing, and himself just being a part of what we're doing kind of helps us and motivates us to continue pushing it into these different fields. He himself has invested in headsets and providing him to mobile units that kind of go out and do dialysis and things like that. So seeing someone like that outside of our company that's just willing to kind of help and push it further gets us off our feet and kind of keeps doing things that we do as well.
When we decided to quit our last venture, everyone that we had employed, so we had 10 employees at that time, they all could have stayed. But one of them, our first hire, he kind of led the way and said, nah, look, we can't stay with these people that are buying out the founders of this company. And they all ended up quitting, and they all started working for us at Limbr. And that person, is an amazing first follower, because we started building it up last year in the Bay Area, and I started pitching, and I started going to conferences and trying to find investment and partnerships, and it was all happening. And then we got a couple of offers, and it was really exciting. And at that point, this person basically had a Skype call with me and said, I have to pull out. And I asked why, and then they said, look, this whole process, just conceptualizing it, like writing the pitch deck, doing the prototyping and everything, has really been quite confronting for me. And this is someone that I knew identified as genderqueer, and they identified as female online. But over this call, they basically just came out and said, look, I'm not my body. I have gender dysmorphia. I've had to speak about it with my family. I've had to speak about it with therapists, and this whole process has helped me realize that and not be ashamed of it. So I have to I'm very sorry I have to step away, but it was the best possible reason, and it's the first person we really helped, I guess. So that person is a huge advocate for us. Like, we're doing a campaign, and it will continue while we're running the company, where we essentially practice what we preach, and we are vulnerable about our own mental health in doing something that is very stressful, which is building a company. And that person will be a very vocal proponent on there, talking about gender issues, especially at the intersection with technology, and how the online world actually helped this person really express herself truly for who she was. So yeah, she's an amazing first follower.
Awesome. That's a beautiful story. Okay, this question is for you, Dave. If I'm not mistaken, you self-identify as a social entrepreneur. That word evokes something very different to just straight entrepreneur. So why did you choose that term? And Shelley and Dave, why don't you use that in your definition of yourself, or your introduction of yourself?
I'm actually a bit icky on that term now. Yeah.
Tell us why. Tell us why.
Well, just because it lets other entrepreneurs off the hook. Like, everyone is a social entrepreneur. They all make some sort of social impact. If someone had told Mark Zuckerberg when he was 20 years old what social entrepreneurship was, I think Facebook would be a very different organization to what it is today. I think we can see from, I don't know how closely everyone follows him, but he seems to have a bit of a soul to him. Like, he set up this charity, and it's not all about making money, even though they are this multi-billion-dollar company. But he got let off the hook because he's this entrepreneur. He's not a social entrepreneur, which, demarcating that is a get-out-of-jail-free card for the people who are just trying to make money out of something that will have a social impact, regardless of what they do. So, yeah, I'm trying to be more conscious of that. I think it's a good, explainer straight away that what we're doing isn't this pure for-profit enterprise. I think if you say, yeah, I'm a startup entrepreneur, they're like, oh, so you're one of those 20-year-olds who know it all, who are going to make millions and just buy 20 jet skis for their friends. And we're not that type of entrepreneur. So I think if we your language is very powerful. So I think if we can start to try and create some sort of uniform term, like, I really liked how you guys have rebranded to impact entrepreneurship. Maybe I'll start using that. So yeah, I'm an impact entrepreneur.
Yeah, I guess it's a for a more soulless response, a pragmatic response. The phrase means different things to different people. So I would use it to describe us when I feel that's a useful way of communicating something about what we do that the person I'm speaking to will value. But primarily, I want to get gardens onto roofs and walls. I want that to be profitable because it enables us to do it in a sustainable way whereby we can reinvest into the company and have even more impact. I don't particularly care whether I'm registered as a social enterprise or not, although at the time we incorporated, it would have involved quite a lot more paperwork. So simply, why would you do it? You've got other things to do. So that's a pretty pragmatic response to it, Abina. I do think the way the word is used has changed in the last couple of years. I'm very happy to be included in conversations about social enterprises, and if I'm excluded, I feel a bit left out, but that's just because I always want to have my cake and eat it too.
So I guess we had a bit of a different start to both of you guys in terms of creating the company that was based around providing these 3D services, and the social aspect hadn't involved in it yet. So as we kind of grew as a company and kind of started doing these social impact projects with both the National Trust and now the hospitals, it got us thinking about how we should kind of go about it. And it's actually interesting that when we first started doing it, we considered actually starting a new company by itself, and was it going to be a non-for-profit or a profit for a purpose? And there's a whole bunch of stuff around that kind of convolutes and kind of goes every which direction. But we kind of landed on something which you touched on earlier, which is B Corps, and it's something that we're kind of pursuing at the moment. And it's a really interesting way of thinking. So no longer are you after the benefit for the shareholders, but it's now the stakeholders. So that's everyone that's involved, everyone from the suppliers to your end users, and how everyone through that supply chain can benefit from it. So there's not so much guidelines, but there's certain things that you can do to provide a better service in terms of what you do. And then the more people that you get involved in these B Corps, all of a sudden you're creating a community that these businesses are creating a profit, but also doing it in a way that's actually benefiting everyone around them as well. So that's the way that we're kind of positioning ourselves as a company moving forward.
Awesome. I'd like to talk a little bit about business. You all have very different business models. Could you share a little bit about how you got started and what was the most difficult thing about that? How did you know it was working? And how was it that you knew that you're making a social impact, and how are you measuring that?
Sure. So getting started, myself and my business partner, one of my business partners, Trent, have been friends since about 12 years old. So it's quite easy. We've always been bouncing his business ideas off each other, and he's always been showing me all this technology and how it could work. And one day he showed me this 3D scanner, and at the time I was an accountant, a lot of fun. And it kind of made me realize that what I was doing, I was like, this is it. Like, that was the moment that I kind of wanted to do something else. It took me a while to finally quit my job and jump into the deep end. But that's how the whole idea kind of got started around this 3D scanning technology. And then the business is kind of like a mind map of Trent. So it's kind of going in every direction to just trying to help people and do different things and kind of achieve all these different goals. And what was the second part of the question?
How did you know it was working?
Yeah. You don't, you really don't. So a lot of the time you're doing these things and you have this idea, like, because you're brainstorming with your team and you're like, yeah, this is it, and it's not it. And that comes out pretty quickly. And then so you fail and you try something new, but it's kind of, I guess, validation in terms of, we're kind of fortunate enough to working in tech, so we have analytics kind of showing us that thousands of people are looking at our stuff for so many hours, and that's in itself kind of like a boost, but in most of it, it's more of a trial and error and hope that you land at the right area to kind of pursue something that goes in the right direction. In terms of like the social impact side of things, the easiest way to know that we're making a difference is when we put a VR headset on someone's face and you see them smile. And speak to anyone in our company, the best part of our day is when we go to conferences or go to the hospitals and we get to show people VR for the first time. They're going to remember that moment, and it's because it's something amazing, and it's never going to get old, seeing people smile when they put it on and be like, wow, this is actually a thing, and it's not like this sketch. It's actually, you're actually immersed in something, and it's absolutely amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll start with the second part first. Completely agree with Steve that I don't know if it's working or not. But I guess that's partly because when you're a young company, you're trying to grow all the time. So if something doesn't work, then you try to learn from that and move on as fast as you can. If something does work, you immediately shift the goals for yourself because you've done that and you're moving on. So I guess in one way it's not surprising we say we don't know if it's working because you're not trying to perform at just one level all the time. You're continually trying to perform at a higher rate. So it's always aspirational and ambitious in that sense. I also feel very similarly to Steve about the sort of feedback you can get from customers or clients. So in our case, if we run a hands-on horticultural workshop and I see people really excited about working with plants and really engaged with our really dour South African ecologist, that gives me a lot of joy. And equally when we've created a beautiful garden on a roof, or when we've just done some, like, just last weekend we did a green wall facade, and so it's probably not very apparent to the client, but we worked with a system that's very tricky to work with, and I could see from the photos from the team just how much attention to detail had been paid, and that's hugely rewarding, and for me makes me feel like, yeah, something's working. How did we get started? That was the other part of the question. Well, we were a campaign first, and we were a campaign to promote green roofs, and my co-founder of the campaign and I wanted to promote them because people generally in Australia in 2011 didn't think that you could have gardens on roofs, and the City of Melbourne had said to us they had money that they were willing to spend to create a public green roof that people could go onto if we could demonstrate that there was demand for it. So we thought the experience of going onto a green roof would be transformative. Having done that, no one would ask, is it possible anymore? So that seemed like a good strategy for the campaign, that we would demonstrate demand for a public green roof. In the course of running the campaign, we on the one hand, we got a fair bit of media attention and won some awards, which resulted in people saying to us, can you just go ahead and create the green roofs? And on the other hand, I was consulting as a freelancer, in part to government, and learning more about the processes that government goes through in making decisions and taking action, and coming to realise that with the best informed and best people of the best will in the world, government processes tend to be slow, and if we wanted to get green roofs happening fast, we could probably do that more quickly in the private sector. Plus I was excited about having the capacity to influence the type of green roofs that were created. So I came to think that the strategy that was the rationale for the campaign no longer justified a campaign. It would, if we really wanted to get green roofs happening fast, we should do it as a business, and we already had some signs of market demand. By far and away the trickiest thing, I think you asked what the most difficult thing about getting started was, is just getting started. That was really scary. So many things have been scary since then, but forming an equity agreement, I think, is the hardest thing you do. And any time you renegotiate that or you negotiate it with someone else, that's the stuff I find really, really hard. And I can hear both my co-panelists murmuring sympathetically, which makes me happy. Oh, sorry, but I should just say, so my advice on that score would be just do it. It's not going to get any easier, except when it's done, and you can do it. It's just conversations with people.
What was the question again? Business models?
More around how you got started.
Yeah.
Just tell me, like, what two things did you put together, or who were you talking, what sort of mental health professionals were you talking to just to get that first?
Well, I think like from a business sense, like the way I look at the world is generally like in a problem-solving type macro fashion. And like you guys at PHORIA, like you guys are doing amazing stuff with like really innovative tech, but I don't have a technical brain, and I don't have a co-founder that has 3D scanners and 2 or 3 years before anyone else does. So I always think of the market as my solution to things, or the only executable solution that I can actually add some value to. So the market is the best business model I think ever invented, because it naturally manages itself, and it's supply and demand. And using the internet, you can create transformative impact with a really simple model. The thing is, it's really hard to execute because there's two sides that you have to build at the same time, supply and demand. So that's what we did at our last company. So yeah, someone would post up a job because they were, working 60 hours that week and they couldn't get to it, and some person who was keen on that or good at that, or they wanted to impress someone, put their hand up and they got it. So in that scenario, inside an enterprise organization, we managed supply and demand really, really well. And I think some of our first validation around that, and a big part of kind of startup business principles, is this really kind of humble approach to assumptions, which is that, yeah, you have a great idea, fantastic. Learn how people actually use it and listen to what they say. And yeah, like they were saying with analytics, you have this instant feedback loop where you can go, okay, this isn't quite working. So we were seeing things that were like, this button's broken, this link is stuffed, I hate this app or whatever. And then someone would write back like, this button's broken, but I got to go home and spend time with my kids tonight because there's this software that our company is now using, where before I just had to stay at the office until 9 p.m. or whatever. So I think, yeah, from a business model execution point of view, the marketplace is probably the most digestible for anyone that's not technical. So if you see like this solution where these people need these people and they can't see each other, the marketplace is the really easy solution to that. The hard thing is executing that, and that's where you can learn some really valuable skills in startup schools. So MAP is obviously a great one if you can get in. There's General Assembly and Collective Campus, I think. Yeah, and they teach you these practical skills about how to build up a two-sided marketplace and solve a problem. So yeah, when we started with Limbr, we thought the solution was right in front of us there. It was like, you have a group of people that need this group of people. And not many people know it, but the solution is this entire country called Argentina, where they have no stigma around mental health. And as a result, they have more than double the amount of therapists per capita than any other country in the world. And it's this like unique timeline of social and cultural developments that have led to this really healthy ecosystem. Like, you know, they've got lots of problems there still, but it's like, it's almost fashionable to say, yeah, I'm talking to my therapist about it. So when we saw that, and then when we saw, you know, what we'd done with our previous companies with marketplace business models, we just thought, okay, so the stigma is the thing that blocks people from accessing the service. How can we combine marketplace business modeling with something that creates this social barrier to drop? And that's when I started just trying to learn as much as I could about mental illness and how people actually take that first step. Because, yeah, what we think is like, once you take that first step, the path is much more manageable. It's just that first step that you build up in your head is completely unmanageable, you know? You have to confront all of these things. And that's really scary, that's terrifying. So if we can just make it really, really easy for you to discreetly and conveniently access someone, and then you're hearing other people saying, oh, this works, then yeah, hopefully that marketplace model can work still. But yeah, we're in the really early stages of Limbr, but we're just trying to approach it in an alliance type way. So we want everyone on side. We want clinicians and government and the third sector. So yeah, we're being patient, I guess. But yeah, the just do it advice is the best advice. It's so much more manageable to break down this question of wanting to change the world by just, yeah, trying to figure out what kind of executable thing you can do. And the simplest thing with marketplaces that you can do is just survey. So like, would you like to utilize this service? And once they're made aware of it, then you kind of have a little bit of early validation, and then you can turn that into maybe a pitch deck, and then maybe take it to an investor, and all of a sudden you've got yourself a startup that's solving a problem. So yeah, it's achievable, but yeah, just be mindful once you're on that path of how difficult it is. Yeah, it's easy.
Fantastic. So we have a little bit of time left for some questions, and you can impart more sage advice over our fireplace. So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand.
Thanks, guys. I just wanted to discuss, I would like you to discuss profit. I think everybody seems to be, and it's phenomenal, and non-for-profit. How transparent, vulnerable in that sense. I've been discussing this a lot lately. When you make money, it needs to be sustainable. Advice, a key, how much profit is not exploiting but still sustainable?
We're for profit, and the limit to how much profit is acceptable is not a pressing question for us at the moment. We're 2 years old, and I think you'd be very, very fortunate to have that as your chief worry at the moment. So I'm not trying to be flippant in response, but there are a lot of financial questions that preoccupy me, and that's not one of them at the moment.
I do agree, but I do understand where you're coming from as well. So there are a lot of not-for-profits out there right now, and a whole bunch of different names for different things as well. Like I was mentioning before, profit for a purpose, which I really, really like. So your profit goes back into the business or back into a social cause that kind of goes somewhere, but you're still pulling out a slight profit from it. I think if that's a serious concern of yours, really look into B Corps, because in that sense that you're creating this ecosystem again where you're able to give back in so many different ways through your supply chain and everything involved, that even if you are making millions and millions of dollars, it's coming through sustainable ways, and for both for environmental and social causes, and then it's going back in the same direction. So even where you're paying for your supplies, it's going in the right direction, you know where it's going. So yeah, I'd highly recommend looking into B Corps.
Yeah, I think if you can attach your actual profit to your impact, then the more profit, the better. So like us, for example, the way we trade, our actual service is our impact. So connecting those who need it, those who are vulnerable, to care providers that can help improve their quality of life is our impact metric and our revenue metric. So every dollar that we make connecting a care provider to someone who needs it is someone who's getting better, potentially, hopefully, and revenue for our own company. The way we think about it is essentially how to make the most impact. And I have a lot of admiration for people that work in the not-for-profit space, but I also was very unfamiliar to that world, and then went to a conference called SOCAP last year, which is marketed as the world's biggest conference for social entrepreneurship and impact investment. And what I saw there was a little bit of a taste of the kind of not-for-profit industrial complex, as well as the kind of savior complex, which I think can crop up because the really tricky thing with not-for-profits is that there's no one thing to measure. In the private sector, everyone is held by this one metric, which is profit. So if we can start to shift that perspective a little to say, the profit that we're making here is our impact. And there's a number of good examples in there, and that's where I think you can obfuscate that question. But if you're doing something that is like social procurement, so you're selling something and then the proceeds of that thing goes towards causes that you care about, then you've got to figure out the right structures. And it is complex because there's no uniform structure right now. So B Corps, I think, has a lot of potential to become that uniform structure, because what it incentivizes is the same thing that the private sector incentivizes, which is to become as efficient and successful as possible, but it just shifts the value from the shareholders to the overall stakeholders. So that in your decision making, if you're looking at a decision that drives profit towards the shareholders but detracts from this stakeholder, let's say it's an end user, then you won't make that decision. You'll vote no. And I think that's really powerful, because at the end of the day, we're trying to make the most impact we can because we care about this. So yeah, if we can create a structure that drives that impact to its highest potential, then I think profit can be a really good thing. It's a conflicting scenario until you can hopefully try and work out how to merge impact and profit together. Can I say this? I'm currently still looking for a co-founder. So if any of you are out there, no, we've got an amazing founding team so far, but we are well aware that the tech space is almost systemically sexist. So we need diversity in the team. Like it's critical. So I'm still looking for a woman to help lead us who cares deeply about this. And we're trying to be, I guess, as affirmatively active as we can. We've got guys applying for this kind of out the kazoo, but they, like I said, there's only so many founder positions that you can have. But back to your actual question rather than a plug, going for a co-founder is a lot like dating, I've realized. It's because what you end up looking for is essentially a marriage. That is one of the key things that helped me and my co-founders at our last company actually survive and not just completely break down mentally, emotionally, was how much we could rely on each other, lean on each other. It really was like this marriage where there was non-verbal communication, there was the ability to read someone, because it's a really, really stressful journey. Our experience was an outlier, but it's critical to actually get personality fit before you get anything else. So I think a really good starting point is to post up the skills and expertise that you're looking for, but then to just meet and keep meeting and then start working if you can. And just say, look, this is a huge opportunity that we can create together. Let's have a little go at it and see how we work together. And I think if you start to find that you're unable to communicate properly or anything that you would translate to a dating situation, then be like, okay, well, probably not going to marry this person. Because that's kind of the intensity of the relationship. I would really strongly advise taking a romantic, if you can, take that with of salt, kind of perspective on trying to find a co-founder. And then I think you guys will, ride the highs and lows together and achieve more.
On the subject of looking for a co-founder being like dating, I met my business partner in a queue to a party in the basement of a great building in Melbourne. So I guess that's not dissimilar. It was a Changemakers event, and you had to, while you were waiting in the queue, you had to take a white sticker and put it on your forehead with 3 things you cared about on it. And I can't remember what my 3 things were, but one of them was green roofs. And he had bins, waste, and green roofs. So I read the first 2 and was like, what? But then I saw green roofs, so that was awesome. And it's, what a great guy. And we do actually do quite a lot with bins and waste now, so it's all come together in ways I never dreamt of.
So I guess I was pretty fortunate in the way that we kind of came to build our co-founders, in that the group that's kind of built Phoria right now, we all went to high school together pretty much, the majority of us. So we've known each other for quite a long time. And like after school, we all went our separate ways, some into photography and some into design, others into like marketing and psychology, myself into finance. Went off in our own little thing and then came back a few years later and decided to start this thing up together. So I guess I come from a little bit of a different background, where I kind of got really, really fortunate in that I've married my best friends. So it was really, really good that way. Yeah, it is. And it's really fortunate. So, yeah.
Well, I have a different perspective on that. I feel like my business partner and I could be really good friends. I like him stacks. But when he suggested, we were both going to WA over Christmas last year, and he suggested that we meet, and I was like, mate, I'm sorry, but you are the last person I want to see on my precious holiday. So I really like the fact that we're not friends and we don't socialise, and I think it just depends on your personality.
Absolutely.
But I really love having some parts of my life that aren't the business, and that's an important part of myself as well. So.
Definitely.
I think we have time for about 2 more questions.
Yeah, I'll go first. I'll be quick here. It's a really hard one in terms of the people that you bring on board. And again, it's like another relationship that you're building there, because not only are these people going to be influential in your decision making and the way that the business goes, but they're going to help you grow. So in terms of the way that our board is slightly structured, there's a few of the co-founders, and then we have advisors there as well. And again, a position where foreign investors come. I think one of the key things for when you're looking for directors, not so much opposing views, but different views. You don't want the same sort of person multiplied on there. You want people that have different thought processes that can provide you with different sort of advices. And when those decisions come, having those different, obviously aligned in the same direction, but coming from different angles.
So in our last enterprise, it was a private sector institution. So the board makeup there is a little bit different. But I think some of the kind of rules ring true in the not-for-profit sector, which is that you want your board members to add more than just the decision-making at the board level. So it sounds, great, but try and get someone who is, a big dog in whatever field they're operating in. So if they can open up doors for you, and I'm thinking just on the fly, if you're a not-for-profit, you really want someone who's well-connected into philanthropy, family offices, all the grant makers, because they will open doors for you. And that should hopefully align them to your cause, which is another really important thing. Like I said, our last experience was a massive outlier. I'm not going to say that every board is going to attack you for your company, but when you are in that situation and it becomes like Game of Thrones or something, you need to have people in your corner. It becomes like this full-on political battle. Like, I don't want to scare you. You're probably not going to go through that. But it's. I think it just rings true that you want allies with diversity. And if you can, the little cherry on top is, they can actually do stuff for you. They can open up doors or get you pro bono deals.
Well, our board is just myself and my business partner, so I think you're further ahead on that one than me. So.
One last question.
Hi, I'm Kelvin. First of all, thank you. I come from a medical background and I have a specific question. I'm just wondering, especially because I acknowledge that there are so many misconceptions, how can you guarantee that?
Yeah, that's a massive concern of ours, and we're thinking very actively about it. It's probably the main thing we're focused on. So we have governance structures. So yeah, board is one of them. We're thinking about the actual company structure to limit it by guarantee, to register for B Corp. But in terms of the actual medical service delivery, we don't pretend to know how to make people feel better in a clinical way. All we know how to do is build these digital companies that can solve big problems. So we're leaving that to the clinicians. We have an advisory board made up of some very prominent clinicians as well as lobbyists in the mental health space. We are working with a psychologist in the UK who has developed a course around active listening, which there's a huge amount of research that suggests that is the predominant kind of efficacy value in talk therapy, is just the listening. You have someone to talk to who just mirror you and cue you. So that's the training course that we're going to be offering to anyone that wants to become a listener on our platform. And that's a service where you can log on anytime and you can scroll around the feed, and then if you want, you can register as a listener, do the course, you get guided through a few sessions, and then you can active listen. The other really key governance issue that we have is this is all digital. So number one is privacy. So we need to ensure that we're HIPAA compliant. Fortunately, Australia has probably some of the strictest privacy laws in the world. So if we comply with those, then I think we're good for the rest of the world. We have legal advice, pro bono from top end of town that specialize in medical regulatory advice. And then what else? Yeah, we're thinking about everything really, I guess, humbly and trying to defer that to the actual clinicians and care providers. So yeah, when therapists sign up as a Limbr provider, they also indemnify us. So they are still in control of the care provision. But now that we have everything aggregated into a digital tool, what we can also do is monitor it as well. So, not even talking about the research potential of that, which we're really excited about, is also the moderation potential. To actually, we're using a technology called natural language processing, which starts to determine how words are being used. So as clinicians are actually delivering care, we can figure out what's working for people and what's not at the same time as well. So yeah, there's all the governance structures within the current system that we will try and integrate. We will integrate, but then we want to go above that and also layer another digital level of governance over it to make sure that, yeah, no one does fall through the cracks, and we can, make it as safe as possible.
Thanks so much, Steve. I'd like to invite the audience to give our panelists a big... We're going to follow suit and do our own mini hustle here. And I just want to say, first of all, that we would love to see you along to the MAP launch party next Wednesday night, if you can come. This is when we have our grand reveal, the 10 amazing startups that will follow in Stephen's footsteps and be part of the MAP program this year. And... we had a pretty picture, but never mind. The main thing is that it's technology fair. It's on, it's on our websites, and we are thrilled that we have our first social startup, kind of self-identifying social impact startup in the mix this year. So that's really exciting. So we'd love to see you there. Our next masterclass is with Grace McQuilton, the founder of the Social Studio. So she's doing one on how to intensify your social social impact and staying true to your social mission. Please note in your diaries too the detail. We've got details on the website again, but we have an open mic co-founder startup event as well coming up. So just on this question of how you find teams and form teams, we'll have an event dedicated to finding your match. And then the final thing is that you can register interest online now for the Compass Pre-Accelerator program, which will be running later in the year. And we're really excited about that program too. So please look at all our cool things that are coming up, and we hope to see you again. Thank you for coming.